Hello, and welcome to our Make the Cut Palm Center Spring 2022. It's so wonderful to have you here. We're on a mission to ease your transition, and I'm your host, Patty Stewart. We begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. It's wonderful to see so many of you students here. We've got kids from various schools across Eastern Ontario and around the Ottawa area. It's fantastic to have you here. It's also wonderful to have so many educators and your parents involved. They've been wonderful supports for you. And we're going to show you some more supports that you have in post-secondary. Before we get started, I have some housekeeping items to go over with you. To follow along with live captions, please refer to the link in the live Q&A. There are the notes. The accessible versions of PowerPoint presentations can be found on the Make the Cut webpage after the event. The link will be posted in the live Q&A. Use the live Q&A to post your questions throughout the event. Any post shared to the live Q&A will be anonymous. Finally, if we experience technical difficulties while hosting the event, it will be announced in the event chat. If no announcement has been made, you're experiencing technical difficulties, the issue may be your internet connection or hardware. If you need any further assistance, please feel free to email pmc@carleton.ca. All right, and now to officially welcome you is the Acting Director of the Paul Menton Center, Mr. Bruce Ham. Bruce?
Thank you very much, Patty. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 34th edition of Make the Cut. This afternoon is based on the Carleton experience, and some of you may be planning on coming to Carleton this fall. So after this afternoon, you will already have a good sense of what types of supports will be available for you when you begin your classes. However, some of you may be planning on going to other colleges or universities, and that's fine too. I think what's important for you folks is that during this afternoon, you may get some ideas of supports that you think might be helpful, especially for you. And you can ask about those and their availability at the Disability Services Office at your college or university. In thinking about my remarks this afternoon, I could not help thinking about my grandfather. He was born in 1902 and a minister's son. My grandfather lived in a world with conflict in Europe, and when he was right about the age that you are today, he also lived through a global pandemic in the form of the Spanish flu. It's always amazed me at the tremendous amount of change that people of my grandfather's generation witnessed. When he was young, there was no cars to speak of. The prime means of transportation was still the horse and buggy. His parents couldn't afford a horse and buggy, so my grandfather's prime means of transportation was walking. So when an older relative says, well, you don't know how lucky you have it now. When I was your age, I had to walk to school X number of kilometers uphill both ways. Well, in his case, at least not uphill both ways, but at least X number of kilometers, he was right. When he died in 1995, the world was a vastly different place. Lately, I've been reflecting on his life, and I've come to realize that he didn't just witness an enormous change through his lifetime. He actively participated in it. He may not have invented the automobile, but he, among millions of others, saved his hard-earned money and bought one in his late 40s. He didn't invent the electric light bulb, but when he and my grandmother built their house and saw the advantage of having electricity, a telephone, and eventually a television on which they were able to watch the moon landings. In his own way, he embraced and helped define change. You are now coming to a point in time where you'll be taking the next steps on your own journey to define change in this world. I know that given the events of the past couple of years, none of you have had a typical high school experience. I think my grandfather will have felt a connection to your generation. It is our hope, however, that you're able to participate fully in a true college or university experience this fall. That will be the next step in your journey. and I, for one, am anxiously awaiting to see what this journey holds for you and your peers. The purpose of Make the Cut this afternoon is to prepare you a little bit more for that next step. And just like my grandfathers, I expect your journey to be full of wonders as well. Thank you very much, gang. Enjoy your afternoon. Don't hesitate to ask questions. Now's the time to do it. And back to you, Patty.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you very much, Bruce. Would like to have met your grandfather. Yes, there is a big journey coming up for you high school students, and I'm sure you have some feelings about it. We'd like to check and see what kind of feelings you have about your big next step. And so we're going to do that with an audience poll. If we can pull up the directions on the screen. There's two ways to join the audience poll. One is to open a web browser and visit www.pollev.com/MTC2022 or text MTC 2022, go to 37607. And the third way is to scan the QR code on your phone. All right, so give you a second just to get hooked up in one of those three ways, and then I'll give you the question. And we want to see what your feelings are about next year. Okay, here's our question for you. In one word, how do you feel about going on to post-secondary in the fall? Educators and parents, you can put in a statement as well. How do you feel about moving on to college or university next fall? I'm hoping those are going to show up on the screen for us. There we go. Nervous, yes. Excited. Excited. Beautiful. Impatient. Wonderful. I can certainly understand why you're being impatient. It's time to get on with it. Butterflies, I love it. So an awful lot of unsure, excited, and I love the one that says nerve-sighted. That's nervous and excited all together. Beautiful. Thank you very much for sharing your feelings about what's coming up next year. And it's certainly understandable that you have these kinds of feelings, but we have the prep for you for that next transition step, because like I said, we're on a mission to ease that transition. Here's the agenda that we have for the afternoon. We have two presentations before our break: Plan Your Transitions and Learning Strategies. We'll have a 5-minute break. Our third session is Assistive Technology, and we wrap up with our Paul Menton Center Student Success Panel. All right, so let's get started with our first session. Here on a mission to ease your transition is Sonia Tonge, a Senior Disabilities Coordinator at PMC. She's got a GPS map set for you. GPS is all set here, and GPS stands for going to post-secondary. And this is called Plan Your Transition. During Sonia's presentation, you can ask questions on the chat. They will be answered during the Q&A. Afterward, that Q&A will be led by Amanda. So Sonia, give us the GSP.
Thank you, Patty, for the introduction. So welcome everyone to Plan Your Transition. So today what I'll be talking about, I'll give you kind of a brief overview. I'll be talking about the transition itself, planning, the accommodation process in post-secondary, documentation requirements, what types of accommodations you may expect or assume that you may receive in university, and support services. I will plant a seed in terms of how to plan ahead as we are moving from May to the summer and the fall coming up, and then there'll be a Q&A afterwards. So moving on to the next slide. So just to get the ball rolling a little bit, we'll do a poll everywhere, similar to what Patty did earlier. So if you can log in online, pollev.com/MTC2022, you should already be in there, or text MTC 2022 to 37607. And now I want you to think, so a lot of you mentioned that you're nervous and perhaps anxious or impatient, but now think about the planning phase. So what words come to mind when you think about planning your transition to post-secondary? If you can go ahead and put the first words that come to mind. Just waiting from responses. Schedule, yes. Eek. Daunting. Impatient, nervous. Okay, there's still a bit of anxiety around that. Rough. Okay, so feeling a bit rough about maybe not knowing, unfamiliarity. Sick, growing, stressful. Lots of variety here. Maybe stomach nervousness, so stress is coming up. It's getting a little bit small. I'll need some glasses perhaps to read. Great. So stress seems to be the most predominant one, similar to what an unsure, so unfamiliar, uncertainty, right? Okay, thank you. And perhaps failure. Okay, we'll talk about that. So moving on to the next slide. Thank you for sharing, everyone. This is a really nice way also to kind of have that collective approach, that sense of community where we're not the only ones that are feeling this way. So some of you may be moving on to post-secondary, but maybe some of you are also attending as students who are planning into going into grade 12 and thinking about university or college. So just a couple things to think about, because not all of you are moving on to next year. So when you're planning your transition and you're trying to choose your program, it's important to consider your strengths, your aptitudes, your weaknesses, but also to think about doing some labor market research. Since the pandemic and even the last little while, there's been a lot of changes in the labor market. Are there more STEM programs that may be of interest? Thinking of co-op programs and employment opportunities. So those are all things that we want to think about as your first step. So some of you have already reached out because you already have been perhaps accepted, or you will be receiving your offer of admission shortly. Next slide, please. So moving on to talking a little bit about the differences between high school and post-secondary. So when we're talking about that, I want you to think a little bit about the distinction from a legal framework and an accommodation process. So in order to access to education for students with disabilities, it's regulated. In high school, it's regulated through the Education Act. And post-secondary, it's regulated based on the Ontario Human Rights and the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities. To show that a student has a disability, in high school, they can have an IEP. It can be based on a formal diagnosis, or it can be based on an informal identification, so no exceptionality. But moving on to university, or college, post-secondary, you need to have recent documentation completed by a regulated health professional that confirms both functional limitations and a diagnosis. So when I'm talking about functional limitations, I'm talking about specific areas where your disability affects you in the learning environment. I'll have to apologize for a second. I'm going to mute a chat function that I have here. There's a lot of information coming in. And I think you guys can probably hear the beeps as they're coming in. Okay, next slide, please. So In terms of differences, moving on for the accommodation process, the decision to disclose your disability to teachers and professors. In high school, it's made by your parent or your guardian if you're under 18. In university, it's you, the student, to decide which accommodations students need. In high school, teachers can recommend various accommodations to students. Often, most students will receive, with learning difficulties, will have access to the same accommodations. We see that a lot when we look at IEPs. When we're talking about post-secondary, the disability advisor and the coordinator will review your documentation and only choose specific accommodations that meet your learning profile and functional limitations and consider essential course requirements. I'll have to apologize again. There's some noise going on. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but it's quite noisy over here in my office right now. Next slide. And when I'm talking about essential course requirements is the essential learning outcomes and objectives you need to actually reach in university. Now we're talking about, again, the accommodation process. So who informs teachers of your accommodation needs? In high school, the special education teacher provides each classroom teacher with their IEPs for all their students. In university, the student must request accommodations every term and follow up with professors to make sure accommodation arrangements are made. So sometimes what happens is I have students that tell me, well, you know, my documentation will get transferred over from my high school and I'm automatically registered. That's not the case. And accommodations need to be set up every term. Why? Well, because you change courses every semester and you have new professors. Next slide, please. So now let's talk about documentation requirements. And I know some of you will have questions during the chat, but just to kind of give you a brief overview here. So if you have, I have an IEP, can I use my IEP as documentation? The question is, no, not in university. So to access permanent accommodation, so that means ongoing accommodations for the duration of your degree in post-secondary education, an IEP is not sufficient documentation. Most universities require an assessment of your functional limitations to determine how your disability impacts you in a learning environment. Documentation needs to be completed by a qualified regulated health professional. That means, what does that means? It means a medical doctor, audiologist, a psychologist. At the PMC, we actually have very specific documentation forms. So if you go on our website, and this link will be shared with you, you can verify based on disability categories. So if you have autism spectrum disorder, there's a form for that. Medical disabilities, if you have a visual impairment, if you have also ADHD or mental health, we have specific forms. We also have guidelines for individuals who have learning disabilities in terms of criteria for the psychoeducational assessments. Moving on, please. I hope that you can't hear the drilling that's going on in my office too much. So in terms of support services that may be available, actually, can we go back one slide? Would that be okay? Yes. Or the slide before that, it's called academic accommodations. That's right, correct. Thank you. So when we think about accommodations and support services, what it is, they are to provide equal opportunity to meet essential course requirements, but they do not guarantee success. They are individualized according to specific disability related needs. It's important that students are actively engaged in the accommodation process, which is a bit different from high school. You need to it's a collaborative approach. And accommodations are usually formalized in a document, and we call them letters of accommodation here at the PMC, but other institutions may call them differently. And they are issued by the Disabilities Office to your professors. Next slide, please. So specific accommodations that students may receive in university may be extra time, a quiet location, access to a computer, if there's evidence that that is required, or the use of assistive learning technology. Classroom accommodations may include audio recordings of lectures, as well as captioning or note-taking support. Moving on. In terms of student support services, supplemental notes from a volunteer note taker may be available, individualized learning strategies, peer mentoring, disability counseling, assistive learning technology labs, and technology training, tutoring. And there's lots of great employment programs that can allow students to develop transferable skills. And that's in partnership with career services. Now planning ahead. So this is something that some of you may be thinking about right now as I'm talking. So before the spring and the summer, so right now actually, some of you will be getting your offers of admission very shortly. I'm sure some of you are a bit anxious about it, but this is the time to start gathering your documentation and to review the documentation requirements. When in doubt, if you don't know what you need or what you will need for your college or university, you can schedule an information meeting. And what that is we can talk about what your current documentation, what kind of current documentation you have, and if that will suffice, and this is what you will need in order to receive accommodations and learning supports in the university. If you don't have the correct information then or documentation, so there's plenty of time in order to obtain that. This is also an opportunity for you to attend open house events or summer transition programs. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Consider housing arrangements, financial support, and budgeting during the fall. So even though you do an intake over the summer, you will need to follow up in the fall, in early September or late August, in order to set up accommodations. A one-time appointment is not sufficient. It allows you to register, but it doesn't set up your accommodations. We use course outlines and course information in order to set up accommodations. Understand the accommodation process. So when you do that intake, that information will be shared with you. Discuss your accommodation needs with your professors and stay in contact with your coordinator. There's an important aspect here of staying in contact in order, if there's an issue, we can problem solve early and address it early. After the fall and the winter term, as we progress, you want to engage in your ability to assess and monitor your academic progress and well-being, participate in skill development opportunities in order to improve coping and academic skills. And this is something that I really want to reinforce. Stay engaged and connected with others. I know that for the last 2 years, perhaps some of you have felt perhaps more isolated. Some of us have developed maybe a sense of uneasiness in terms of engaging and going out there and trying new things. But there are so many great social opportunities. And I know this year for sure at Carleton, we will be putting so much emphasis on this. Next slide, please. So I'm pleased to announce that this year we have created a new transition program. And that transition program is called PMC Ravens Launch to Campus. So it's an event that's for new students and returning students. We thought it would be a great opportunity to connect the two. It's a 3-hour event. We have a live page that is currently available on our website, and you can actually register for the event already. What it will do, what you will learn is it will focus on strategies to help you manage academic expectations and requirements, and it will be a nice opportunity to meet other students with similar experiences in a fun and supportive environment. Workshops you will be able to choose 2 or 3 workshops during the event, and it will focus either on time management, procrastination, stress management, self-advocacy, brain-based strategies for learning, and boosting academic motivation. And this will be an online event. Next slide, please. Now let's talk a little bit about self-advocacy and what that means and why it will be important in university. So self-advocacy, and I know the panel this afternoon, we're going to have a student panel, and I'm sure they'll talk about this, but what does it mean? It's understanding your disability and your learning profile, your learning strengths and weaknesses. Expressing your needs in a way that promotes open communication. It's collaborative. Understand your responsibility in the accommodation process. It's not just your professor, it's not just the PMC or the disabilities office. You have a role in this. Explain how an accommodation will address a disability related need. And self-advocacy is knowing when to ask for help. Too often I have students that tell me, Sonia, I have a hard time asking for help. And this is such an important aspect of being a good self-advocate, is not waiting too long to ask for help and recognizing what we need in order to ask. Next slide, please. And finally, maybe some quick tips in terms of self-advocacy. When you want to advocate, when you need to meet with your coordinator or talk to your profs, you want to write down some points beforehand and practice. If you're not sure what you should be talking about with your professor in terms of your accommodation needs, your coordinator, disability advisor can help you and coach you. Do that. Focus on your goal, be specific, see what action you think should be taken, propose solution. When a problem comes up, be flexible. If the solution, your proposed solution is not possible, be flexible to what else would be available to you, and ask questions. All questions are valid. And finally, before we move on to our Q&A, again, I prepared kind of a quick checklist, and this is more geared towards Carleton, but gather your documentation. Register with the disabilities office early. The sooner the better. Participate in summer orientation programs. The Student Experience Office has a wonderful website where you can learn about all the upcoming events that are going on. Participate in the campus tour. We actually have a CU virtual experience before you even get to campus and have your feet on campus. We have mini courses. It's called CU 1001, and we have really informative learning strategies modules that you can complete over the summer if you register early, and your coordinator can give you access to that. Stay connected with Carleton by checking your email regularly. You will be receiving lots of informative information. Download the mobile CU app, and that way you can actually verify what you're receiving. And finally, the last one is reach out to your coordinator over the summer if you have any questions. If we can't help you, we will at least direct you to the right person that can provide the assistance and answer all your questions. Now, questions. My colleague Amanda will be facilitating that with me.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Sonia. I do want to let you know we received feedback that no one's hearing drilling or the beeping, so you're all good.
Oh, phew.
On that front.
It was actually distracting me quite a bit.
You were giving us a good technique on how to, take control of your presentation and, redirect things a little bit. So that was good. So questions we have coming in for you. the first one is, when should I register with PMC and disability services, which I think you mentioned should happen during the summer. But does the student need to do it themselves, or will their special education teacher do it for them, or who does that for them, and when should they do it?
No, it's the student. So it's you, the student, that needs to register. Ideally, as soon as you have your student ID number. So once you have your offer of admission, I advise registering with the disabilities office, which wherever you have chosen to go, call the reception, book an appointment, and they will tell you what you need in order to prepare for that intake appointment. If you don't have that offer of admission yet, or you want to at least learn about what you should expect, then book that information meeting, and your parent can be present if needed. So you don't need to be on your own.
And as far as the date of the documentation, if it was done when the person was, let's say, 6 or 12 or 16 even, how old should it be, or is that something that they should wait to talk with their coordinator about?
So ideally, what we're looking for is for documentation that is no older than 5 years old. So if you're 6 years old and your documentation dates from back then it would be out of date. We want information, relevant information, or testing or adult measures that would give us recommendations for post-secondary. So if you were 16, then you could speak to your coordinator, and there's likely that would be sufficient and meet our criteria.
Excellent, thank you. And what skills and strategies should I focus on as I prepare to transition to university and post-secondary?
So right now, I think there was a word earlier when we did the poll everywhere is schedule. So I think an important piece is about planning, time management, developing a routine. So those are wonderful things that you can work on over the summer. So following kind of a schedule, because to be successful in university, the one skill that you need is to have good time management. If you have that, even if you have weaknesses and strengths in certain areas, but if you have good time management, you will be likely a lot more successful. And be curious, be willing to search things over the summer and start investigating because especially with the Student Experience Office and admissions, they will give you lots of wonderful and great informative information about what you need to do to prepare.
And Sonia, how much is the information that you shared with us today specifically about Carleton, or is this for like any college or university?
So today I talked, so in terms of the differences between high school and university, it's pretty much across the board. And that would be also across every institution across Canada has a disabilities office. So I would say it's very much similar. Except the AODA, the Ontario Disabilities Act. However, there's a lot of similarities here, even from universities and colleges.
So essentially, if I get into another university or college, I should go check out their website for their disability or accessibility office.
Yes.
To figure out how to register with that office and documentation I'll need.
Correct.
Okay, and those spaces will also have orientation or transitional events as well?
Correct.
Excellent. And our last one here is, and I think you talked about this a little bit, but what is the role of a coordinator or counselor, and how can they help me with my transition?
Right. So in terms of our role as a coordinator or advisor is really number one is to help you set up accommodations and learning support, help you understand the impact of your disability on the learning environment, especially in a university or college setting. All right. There are things that you will need to do to adapt how you were studying, how you were approaching your learning. So we can guide you with that. We can direct you and refer you to learning supports and resources on campus. We can help you problem solve when you're faced with an issue, whether it's a wellness and mental health issue or an academic related issue.
Awesome. I think that's all of the questions we have time for at the moment for Sonia's session, but please keep the questions rolling in as we do have people answering them on the back end as well. Sonia, I'm going to turn it over to you before we end for today.
So thank you, Amanda, and thank you for attending my session, and I'll pass it on to Patty.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Sonia and Amanda also. And please do keep the questions coming in. Even though it's a clear map that you gave there, a GPS, not GSP, but a GPS map that you gave with the summer transition plan. I also want you to know that there's an awful lot of information that Sonia has given. It's all very important information. Do note that you can review this information later because accessible versions of the PowerPoint presentations can be found on the Make the Cut webpage after the event. So don't be too concerned if you got lost with so much information coming at you. There's a way for you to track it afterward. I do want to tell you we have an awful lot of students from a variety of schools, and say hi to some of those students that are from All Saints, and we've got students sitting in from Canterbury. Wonderful to see them here too. Perth and District way out there, and St. Mother Teresa. Just a wonderful group of kids that have joined us from various schools. All right, so I did want to tell you about one student from Canterbury. This student actually skipped school to go bungee jumping, and it was pretty bad because she got suspended. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next in our presentations and our mission to ease your transition, we have Amanda. That's the voice that you heard asking the questions of Sonia, and Amanda Blay, who is also a senior coordinator here at Disabilities Coordinator at PMC. Amanda is going to tell you about learning strategies that you can use when you move on to post-secondary college or university. So Amanda, it's over to you.
Thank you, Patty, and hello everyone out there. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Amanda, and I will be talking to you about learning strategies. Again, we tend to focus a lot of our information on what we know here at Carleton, but a lot of the things I'll be talking to you about today will apply to anywhere you choose to go. So we're going to get started by taking a look at what I'm going to be talking about today. So we'll be talking about what learning strategies actually is. We're going to talk a little bit more about the differences between school and high school and university, which Sonia already touched on for us, which is awesome. How to get started with learning strategies. What areas does learning strategies address? 3 levels of time management. As Sonia hinted, that is a super important one for post-secondary. And of course, I would love to have some questions from all of you throughout the session. So let's start us off with a poll. You should be used to these by now. So I believe we're going to go over to poll everywhere. And what I'm asking you today is, what do you think are the biggest differences between going to school in high school and in post-secondary? And again, we only get one word. So I'll give you a moment to log into that pollev.com/makethecut2022. Let's see if we can have some responses rolling in here. Always wait in anticipation of what's going to come up first. It's more independent, harder, homework, freedom, responsibilities for sure, freedom again, excellent, workload, independent, big, can be. Awesome. So what are the biggest differences between going to school and high school and in post-secondary? We've got a lot of things going on there. We talk about class sizes, we talk about our responsibilities, independence. So there's a lot to think about. I actually had one student say, thank you so much for filling out that poll everywhere. I love to see everyone's responses. I've also had one student remind me that a big difference between high school and post-secondary is there's no bells. So there's nothing to signify that you're going from one class to another. As Sonia alluded to, everything that happens in post-secondary is essentially self-driven. So that's where we're going to get started, is understanding how to drive yourself, or metaphorically speaking, I should say, or how to, get yourself to class or to campus or the different places you need to be. So let's take a look at the next slide there on how to get started. So Sonia already talked about how important it is to connect with the disabilities office, or accessibility office, as some post-secondaries refer to it as. So again, when in doubt, connect with your coordinator or your counselor, and we will direct you to right places. There's also people called departmental advisors. So those folks are the people within each individual faculty who know what courses you're supposed to be registered for, how many courses you should be taking in a term. They can even probably talk to you a little bit about where your degree might be able to take you. So departmental advisors are super helpful. Your professors, of course, are always going to be great people to connect with. And as I'm sure our students panelists will tell you this afternoon, they're not as intimidating as they seem, as well as someone called teaching assistants, or TAs, as we like to call them. So those folks are the content matter experts in the areas that you'll be studying. People like the student success specialists can be really helpful. So I'm talking about learning strategies that happen specifically in our department for students with disabilities, but there are campus-wide learning services for anybody registered at university or Carleton, and that's everywhere you go. There will be a learning center that you can connect with, and they'll cover things like note-taking, budgeting, reading skills, writing papers. There's a lot out there to help you out, as well as residence advisors, or RAs. So for those of you who are planning to live in residence wherever you go, there will also be an upper year student who will manage your floor. They'll be there to answer questions, help you with your transition. So you don't really have to go very far to ask for help. Just like Sonia was saying, really important to put yourself out there. And if you've got a question, throw it out there. For those people who are planning to come to Carleton in September, all staff wear this little Ask Me button. So if you see that roaming around campus, you can always ask that person for help as well. So after you figure out who to connect with, we then need to think about what learning strategies actually is, and why should I care about it? So learning strategies is a one-on-one appointment with a professional staff person such as myself. And actually, we also hire a lot of student staff too to help with providing learning strategies, which is pretty cool. And what's really cool about learning strategies is that we tailor what we do with you based on what you want to work on. So let's say, for example, you often find doing your readings to be really challenging. We can talk to you about reading strategies, or even some assistive technology, wink to Jordan, that might help you with your readings. We also will try and tailor it all so that you can really think about what it means to be metacognitive. Big word, it just means understanding how we think about thinking. And in this context, maybe even how we, understand ourselves as a learner. So then that way, things don't have to seem as difficult as they might at first, because there's a lot of different solutions and strategies to check out. And not all strategies will apply to all courses. So it's really important to kind of build up that toolkit so that you can vary up how you're learning. We move beyond skills-based teaching to improve self-regulated learning. So again, when we incorporate that idea of making sure that you're spacing out your studies, so you're not trying to cram everything for the night before, which is never a fun experience for any of us, that would be the things that you'd be working on with the learning strategies. And I will say, we had so many students come to us throughout the pandemic because online learning was a whole new experience for a lot of people. And we're expecting that this fall, everyone's going to be coming to us to remember how to learn again. in person, and that's okay. There's a lot of us who are going to need to be working with each other to navigate these new environments that we're learning in. And it's really important to be an active participant, right? So if you know something's not going to work for you, tell the person you're working with, but also try and keep an open mind and try something new. The important thing to remember about different services is that accessing the services is not required on campus. So no one will ever know that you need help unless you put yourself out there. But it is recommended to access the services for success. That's why there's so many services on campus. So working with a learning strategist is just one of probably hundreds that exist on campus for students to access. The areas of development that we often address with students are things like reading strategies, writing strategies, of course, time management and task management, problem solving, organization, studying, note-taking, test-taking, and other academic skills. Like I said before, we often try and pair a learning strategy with an assistive technology or something that really helps to alleviate how much our brains are trying to work at processing so much information. So again, we want to make sure that you're learning in a space that works best for you, because that's the beauty of post-secondary, is that it's all about you. You get to choose what classes you want to take. You get to choose how involved you are in things. So, you know, you can take it at your own pace and no one will know any different. So how do we fit these puzzle pieces that hold everything together? And Sonia already talked about it in her presentation. And that really big glue that holds all the puzzle pieces together is time management. And for many of us, time management has never probably been something that's super easy. And that's okay. The whole point of time management is understanding and discovering different systems that might work for you. And not every system works for people in the same way. Generally speaking, we like to think of time management in 3 different levels. So if you can, always start off with a term calendar. So that's quite commonly a 4-month calendar where you will have all 4 months up on the wall to be able to look at when your due dates are. There's weekly schedules and there's to-do lists. So I'm gonna talk a little bit more about the term calendar. So like I said, once you get your syllabuses or outlines from your professors, if you want to go to the next slide there, perfect. In September, those outlines will have all your due dates, your test dates, all of the things that happen in your classes will be in those. So it's really important to take those dates and throw them into your term calendar. You'll also want to be sure to include the percentages that things are worth so that you know how to prioritize your time and what you should do first. And it can even be helpful to color code so that you can start to see the difference between, you know, what class has a little bit more work so that you can, again, shift your priorities throughout the week. And like it says here, make sure to make it visible. So a lot of us will default to digital calendars because they have reminders. And yes, I still highly encourage using those, but it's also super helpful to have something printed and in front of you that you can just observe on a daily basis to make sure you're staying on track. Then we talked about a weekly schedule. So the one we have up here is one that shows you not just planning for the times that you are in class, but you're going to plan for homework time. I love to plan like travel time. How long does it take to get to campus or to class? It's really important to schedule time for yourself. It seems kind of intuitive, but a lot of people forget to plan the time when they're not doing schoolwork. So it's really great to be able to get yourself into a little bit of a routine so that you know what's coming. So the less your brain has to think about what's coming next, because it tends to be something that is the same from week to week, the easier it is for it to focus on other things that you need to be focusing on. So that's just my spiel on weekly schedules. And again, that can fluctuate too, depending on what's going on in life. And then the last thing we'll talk about with time management is to-do lists. So essentially, what are you going to be doing that day? So we kind of went from big picture to small picture. So what's going to happen in the term, what's going to happen in the week, and what's happening today. And here we have a cute little matrix that talks to us about what you consider high versus lower priorities. And so that matrix just kind of helps you identify what tasks you need to do now, what tasks you need to do next, what tasks you need to do when you're finished, and maybe what tasks you need to delegate or just never do. So really thinking about being intentional about what's on that to-do list. And again, a learning strategist can help you understand all of these different components as well. Kind of a couple of our favorite time management trackers, or what we also refer to as productivity tools, are things called the Pomodoro technique and Don't Break the Chain. Pomodoro is awesome because studies have shown that most of us can only sustain our attention for about 20 minutes at a time, which means I might have lost most of you already because we've already been talking for about 50 minutes so far for Make the Cut, which is why your break's coming up. But essentially what you want to do is choose a task, and you want to be intentional about what you want to do during that 20 minutes. And then once your timer goes off to take a quick 5-minute break, you can either reassess, did I complete that task? Did I lose track and do something else? So it really helps to kind of keep you focused and give you an idea of how productive you're being. And Don't Break the Chain is another really cool concept that helps you identify a goal that you're trying to work towards. So let's say, for example, you're in math and you need to do math practice all of the time. So maybe you might choose, I'm going to do math practice 3 times a week, and that's your goal. Seems pretty manageable. You might even want to set a time. So I'm going to do math practice for 10 minutes 3 times a week. So that often seems a lot more attainable than just, I need to do math practice, which is pretty open-ended. You don't really know how often you need to do it or how long you should be doing it for. So if you can set some small, more manageable goals for yourself, Don't Break the Chain can be really helpful. My caveat to Don't Break the Chain is try not to work towards more than 3 goals at a time, because things can get like really overwhelming. And if you can really focus on maybe 2 academic goals and maybe 1 personal goal, that should be your limit at any given time. In this PowerPoint slide, I should say that the hyperlink underneath these are videos that teach you how to use those skills. So if you wanted to learn about it on your own, it's a great place to get started. Next slide, please. Perfect. Why start with time management? So again, the main thing to remember is that a lot of your peers will have different times. So even if you're in the same classes as most of your friends, odds are you're not going to be in all of the same classes like you might be used to in high school or have a lot of the same classes. So you're going to need to build your own routine. And there's really not going to be a case where, professors or TAs are going to chase you for due dates. And so the only person, again, that you can count on to get some of your facts in order is yourself. So again, you're going to really want to focus on when those due dates are, because although we're used to a lot of flexibility in terms of deadlines, in post-secondary, there's not as much flexibility there. So you really want to start planning ahead and meeting with your professors or your TAs to talk about how to plan to complete things. Sometimes people have accountability partners, so either friends or family members, or I even get used as a learning strategist sometimes and as accountability partner, just to make sure that you're moving along towards some of the deadlines that are coming up. Because again, everything is very self-driven in university. And you're going to find out, like I've said before, kind of how to set up your schedule or how to manage your dates through your course outlines or the syllabi. I still don't know the plural to that word. Your professors and TAs will post, due dates and things within the class schedule, as well as your coordinator and your learning strategist can, again, help you to understand how to plan out things. So yes, you're going to be the one completing all the work, but you still have people here to support you and help you understand what strategies you might want to try for time management. And for those folks who are coming to Carleton, if you already have your student number, you can sign up for our more modules on Brightspace, which focus on study strategies that I've talked about today and a few more, and we're always creating new ones. But these modules will help you, give you an introduction to learning strategies and assistive technology, which Jordan will be talking about after the break. It'll also talk to you about whether or not, after you've done those introduction modules, whether or not you want to meet with someone one-on-one. So some folks like to try things on their own first and then reach out for help. Other people like to reach out for help right off the bat and then try the things on their own. So again, it's all up to you, the order in which you want to do things. It gives you a space that you can continue going back to. So even if you do choose to work with a learning strategist, maybe you're not working with them in your third year, but you want to be reminded of the things that come up that might have changed based on the courses you're taking. So you can always go back and access those modules. And the current modules that are available are modules on time management, note-taking, and studying. Like I said, that's what exists here at Carleton. Check out the institutions that you're going to see if they have learning modules available for you to explore. Because as Sonia mentioned during her session, there might be some things that you can try over the summer before September starts, just to kind of prep and get ready for a few things. So this is our contact information if you want to get a hold of us over the summer and ask more questions, which we always encourage. Please keep your questions coming in. We're located in 501 University Center. Our phone number is 613-520-6608. The Learning Strategies email is PMC_LS@carleton.ca. And as you probably all know, our website for PMC is carleton.ca/PMC, which is where a lot of folks clicked the join button to find today's event. So I'm excited to open it up for questions now.
And I have some questions ready for you, Amanda.
Thank you, Sonia.
So the first one, and please, for attendees, post your questions in the Q&A in the chat, and we will be happy to relay them to Amanda, or I will be. So will the professor always share the syllabus? And how do I find the course syllabus for a specific course?
Great question. Yes. So once classes get started, professors should have their syllabus available to you, and they are required to do that. Some professors even post syllabi or outlines ahead of time. So, once you have access to your learning management site, which is where you'll go to find your courses, at Carleton, it's called Brightspace, then you'll be able to go in there and access your outlines. It'll tell you what textbooks you need, a lot of other information about your class, like how to contact your professor, how to contact your TAs, what the topics are going to be. I always say that your outlines are your roadmap to success. So highly recommend accessing those when they're available to you. And some profs will even email them out as well.
Great. Next question, what resources can I explore on my own first if I'm not ready to meet with a learning strategist or want to prepare now for post-secondary?
Great question. So I believe our back-end folks are going to post some links to some of the learning strategies websites or YouTube channels that are more available out there. One of our professors, Professor Motz, has a whole channel on the science of academic success, and he goes over, how to prepare for your classes, what to look for in your outlines, how to study for your classes. Chris Motz is awesome. So I highly recommend taking a look at the Science of Academic Success, which the link should be posted on for you to look at. A couple other places we love to send our students for learning strategies is College Info Geek. He is awesome. He's very up to date on like all the new things that are coming out for students. So I highly recommend that one. One called Cloud Gear Learning is also very helpful. There's one called Mind Tools and the Learning Scientists. So all of those will have spaces you can explore. You can always start with time management and kind of move from there. But really think about the things that maybe you know is a little bit more difficult for you in school to do, whether that's note taking or writing or reading, and try and explore some of those resources there. And at Carleton, as Sonia mentioned, we have the CU 1000. We also have our CSAS workshops, which are available to all Carleton students, and then the MORE modules, like I was just talking about.
Any cool apps? One app that you can recommend?
Again, I've already talked about it. So the Pomodoro app or Clockwork Tomato can be really helpful. One of our students love an app called the Study Bunny, which again is an accountability app if you have a really tricky time keeping up with studying or the things you need to do.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Can anyone meet with a learning strategist?
So students registered with the Paul Menton Center can meet with a learning strategist, or students registered with the Disability Center can request to meet with a learning strategist. But like I said, all universities and colleges have a learning center that's available to all students. So you can also do drop-in sessions or group sessions through those areas as well.
And are meetings or sessions with a learning strategist done in person or virtually?
We're doing both. Our students love the virtual appointments because we can share our screen, we can give them control. It's really awesome that way. But of course, we also have availability for in-person sessions as well.
Great.
Yeah.
So that's all we have for questions at this time.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Sonia, for your questions. And thank you to all of you for joining me. And I'm looking forward to seeing those of you coming to Carleton. And for those who aren't, all the best. Patty, over to you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Amanda. Just a terrific job and outlining some of those strategies. Again, all that information is available after the event because it's an awful lot of information that Amanda has covered there. I did want to point out one very big difference between high school and university and college, and that is if you go and see a counselor or coordinator, you're going to refer that person by their first name. So if you were to meet with Amanda, you would call her Amanda, not Ms. Blade. In high school, you tend to call teachers by their last name, whether Mr. or Ms. And it's a small difference, but at the same time, it's a big difference because it shows that you're more on an even basis with them, or you're dealing adult to adult with someone who's trying to help you out and work with you. Okay, I did want to mention one thing about one of our schools. All Saints is one of the schools. There's several students here from All Saints, and they have a very interesting math teacher I thought I'd tell you about. This particular math teacher ordered way too much graph paper. It's because he just didn't know where to draw the line. Thank you very much. We will continue our mission to ease your transition after our break. We're going to take a 5-minute break now. And we'll see you back in 5. If you're getting any pretzels, be sure and bring some for me. So take a 5-minute break now, have a good stretch, and be ready to come back for our next session. We have Assistive Technology and then our student panel. So look forward to seeing you back.
How's the chat going? Anything going on there?
We're live. All right, welcome back, everyone. A student from AY Jackson brought me pretzels. That's just fantastic. I appreciate that. She also told me that she's renaming changed the name of her iPod to Titanic. It's because it's sinking now. Thank you very much. Thank you. We have 2 more sessions for you. Our next is our Assistive Technology, and it's brought to you by Jordan Tremblay, a learning strategist here at PMC. She's going to tell you about these technologies. She's got the prep for your transition step. So Jordan, over to you, our techie guru.
Thanks for that intro, Patty. Welcome, everyone. I am here to talk to you about some different assistive technologies today. So just so you all know, I am, in addition to a learning strategist, also an assistive technologist, and my colleague Jason Govias at the PMC is another assistive technologist here. But at any post-secondary institution you go to, you'll be able to meet with an assistive technologist to ask questions about technology you could consider using. They can also help you if you're experiencing any technical difficulties with your technology, and if they can't figure it out, they'll be able to help you reach out to tech support. They're also good people to check in with just to see like if there are site licenses you should be aware of for a particular technology you're considering, or even explore different options for technology if a tool you're using has kind of been working, but you want to see if there's anything else you can consider. So today we're going to take a look at a couple of different technologies, and I decided to really tailor the software we were looking at today just because online learning has been an experience, much like seeing Jar Jar Binks as a character for the first time in the Star Wars movies. So I really wanted to talk about assistive technology in the context of the transition between like a virtual environment to an in-person environment, and what do you do if you're in a bit of a hybrid situation. So I wanted to focus on technology that dealt with note-taking because that's the area which is most impacted by where you're at in school. Now, when we go over these different technologies, I should just mention I'm going to be looking between 2 different screens, so I apologize if it doesn't look like I'm looking right at you. I just need to see what I'm doing on my computer. So first technology of the day today is OneNote. So this is a note-taking technology that pretty much all post-secondary institutions should have a license for, because all post-secondary institutions in Canada have a site license for the Microsoft 365 software suite. OneNote is definitely a technology that most of you have probably even seen on most Windows computers at the very least, but not a lot of people always know like all the bells and whistles of what it can do. So for this particular note-taking technology, in the home page, you have some of the basic features that are very similar to Microsoft Word. You can bold text, you can add bullets, etc. You have embedded dictation software, which, come on, here we go, which you can use for putting down information. For embedded dictation software in the context of note-taking, it can be great to use for a virtual class, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for an in-person class because you're going to catch what your professor's saying and all your classmates who might be kind of like moving about or chatting around you during lecture. But if you're in a virtual environment, it can be great to just watch the lecture, play for a couple of seconds, dictate your thoughts and ideas that you want to take away into your notes, and then repeat the process. Other fun bells and whistles that you can use. There are a lot of great insertion tools. For example, I can attach files into my notes. For example, if, let's see, let's go with a practice quiz here. I can add this practice quiz as an attachment. So if this is something I need to do after reviewing my notes, I can just click on this particular document, and it's kind of like a link on your desktop. So you would be able to open this document later. It's all synced up with your notes. And you don't have to go searching through your files to find this document when you're like, oh yes, I've studied my notes, it's time to review the practice quiz. Another fun thing you can do is a file printout. Now, keep in mind, this can only be done with PDF documents, but you can insert a document. And then if I wanted to, I can use my drawing features to underline or highlight important information that I see on this particular article. I can switch back to typing to add some notes. And the fun thing about OneNote, in any text box you work in, you can move your notes about for you. So this is completely customizable. I kind of like to view OneNote as something kind of similar to a physical notebook, but with the customizability of the digital format. Now, with OneNote, it also has some really nice math features. I can, if this doesn't lag too much for me, it's probably not happy that I'm using all this technology all at once, but that's okay. That's just what makes these AT demos so much fun. And let me just lasso this. And if I click on the math features, so it's going to attempt to convert my poorly handwritten math equation into a typed equation. This is not what I wanted, so I'm going to click fix it, and I'm going to see if it's going to give me what I want. Yes, I want that to be a 2. And let me just get over here, see if I can fix this X. Don't know why it's not liking that, so we're just going to take it as is. But as you can see, it will convert my equation to a typed mathematical equation, which can really make any mathematical notes I take more nicely formatted. Another major feature that a lot of students really like on OneNote is the audio recording feature. So with OneNote, how it works for audio recording, which is important to keep in the context for the type of class you're taking, is it will capture the audio recording through either your microphone or the microphone array on your computer. Now, in an in-person class, this means you probably want to be relatively close to your professor, because if you're sitting way at the back of the class, the audio quality of the recording is not going to be super great. However, if you're at home, this would mean that ideally you're playing the audio of your lecture, whether it be through your computer speakers or if you have access to another device to play the lecture off of, and then you would be recording that audio from the microphone array embedded in the computer you're using OneNote off of. There are sometimes some options, though, especially if you have a Windows computer, to do some system audio recording. In the context of OneNote, though, usually what's happening is you're using a third-party recording application to capture the audio of your lecture as you're kind of watching the lecture, and then you're uploading it to OneNote after the fact. This can definitely be helpful, but one of the nice things about recording live with OneNote is it will sync up what you are doing with. Why is this lagging so much for me? Come on. Okay. Don't know why my enter key is not working, but that's all right. It will sync up the audio recording with what you're typing and also with what you are drawing. So once I'm done with the audio recording, I can stop this. And these play buttons here let me know that the recording has been synced up to what I have done. So I can click this play button, and I just realized I probably didn't share my audio when I screen shared. So we're going to see, and people are going to yell at me in the chat if I messed up. Did I mess up, fellow colleagues? Yes, I did mess up. Okay, we're going to do a new share. Go and take 2. My screen should be live. Okay, so when I play this, as you can see, it's highlighting what I'm doing. And you can hear the audio recording. I don't know why my enter key is not working, but that's all right. It will sync up the audio recording with what you're typing and also with what you are drawing. So once I'm done with, there we go. And as you can see, it highlighted that lovely star that I drew. Please don't judge me on my drawing capabilities, everyone. So that's some of the basics of OneNote. So this is definitely one note-taking software that you can consider when you move on to whatever post-secondary institution you are considering. Another option to consider is Glean. So what's really nice with Glean is I love the recording flexibility with this software, because you can record like OneNote through a microphone array, but you also have the option to capture your system audio from your computer. For a Windows computer, this is super easy. It's a little bit more complicated with a Mac, just because for Mac operating systems, there are restrictions that Apple has put in place to prevent system audio recording. But you are able to record system audio off of Mac if you are capturing the audio from a Chrome tab. And in most cases, for a lot of online classes, that's going to work perfectly. So just to demonstrate what OneNote would be doing via just capturing the audio from your microphone. The audio screen is going to kind of be this line here. And what's nice is you can add these little tags into your notes, so you can see exactly when approximately you added this information in. If you are really bad at listening and either typing or doing any other note-taking activity like myself, you can also just insert a tag directly into the audio screen, and then when you stop recording later, you could click on this other note-taking activity like myself without actually hitting the play button, because that makes these presentations so much better. But you can add your notes after the fact, and that's perfectly fine. You can also break up before and after the audio stream into headings, so you can kind of know exactly what was happening in your notes at a given point. And it will break up your notes so you know very visually what's occurring. Now, I'm going to pull up a YouTube video to demonstrate what happens when we do a audio screen recording. Let's do OneNote, because why not?
Hello everyone, it's Matt.
So for capturing a system audio recording, what you're going to want to do is click the screen audio button. And especially because any Mac users, I'm going to stick with the Chrome tab. Also, I have a YouTube video here that's already in Chrome tab, so it works perfectly. The trick is you select the specific tab you want, and you want to make sure this Share Tab audio box is checked off. Once you've done that, you are good to go. It'll bring you right to the screen because Glean goes with the assumption that, hey, you probably need to hit the play button at some point. So
And welcome to
you just hit
Collaboration
play,
Coach.
and then you can
In this
go back
video,
to
I'm
your
going to give
notes
you a
in Glean.
beginner's guide to Microsoft OneNote. And then at the end, I'll
And
share
I
a
do
few
have a number of
tips on how
students that
I
like
use
to
it.
split their screen so they can see
Before
what
we
their
start, if you
professor
like
is
this video,
doing.
please remember to subscribe to our channel as we
Although I
post
should
every
probably not speak over YouTube videos, that would probably be helpful for you guys. So I have a number of students who like to split their screen so they can see what they're doing. Based on what the professor is talking about, that's definitely an option. For the sake of this demo, I won't necessarily do that because I kind of know what's happening in this YouTube video.
every week, and I don't want you to miss anything. Microsoft OneNote is a digital note-taking tool. You can use it to create notes and add content to them, and it stores your notes in the cloud so you can use them on whatever device you happen to be on. It's very similar to other note-taking tools like Evernote and Google Keep.
Okay, so going back to what I was just doing there. So as you can see, much like doing a recording through my microphone, I was able to type up my notes, add different tags. I did switch to lightning mode, which sometimes is an easier way to work with Glean, just because you can use number keys to insert a particular tag quite quickly. And you can also tell we're in a system audio recording mode, just because right now I'm speaking and it's not capturing the audio. Once you see in Glean that the line is straight, it means no audio is being captured. So we're going to stop that. And we are going to move on to the final note-taking technology we are looking at today. Now, as you can kind of imagine, Glean, great tool for either an in-person or a virtual environment, but we're going to move over to one that you can definitely still use them both, but a lot of people do kind of find easier to use in the in-person environment. So we are going to talk about smart pens a little bit. So a smart pen is a pen that has a ability to capture audio and sync it with notes that you write in a physical notebook. Now, most of these notebooks are going to look something like this, although this one is several years old, so it's been around the block a couple of times. For the pen I'm just using this quick demo notebook right here. But what I'm able to do is just make sure my device is paired and we are good to go. And why is that showing up? Come on. This is the fun of assistive technology demos, everyone. It always decides to glitch out when I'm trying to show about 60+ people how it works. Come on. Yes, you are all good. Well, if this isn't going to work live, we can work around this. So this is a page from a previous note. Let me see if I can find it. in this notebook, it is not. But as you can see, I have two different colors of handwriting in this particular page. That indicates that there's an audio recording there, because with the application, what it does is you see this little microphone button here, it will capture an audio recording. So as I'm writing in my notebook, the audio recording would be captured and it will be paired with what I'm doing in the application. I would then be able to click on this in the application. And when I go to Pencast, I can actually play the audio that is playing. I don't know if this would work at all. Yeah, I don't think any of you can hear that audio, can you? I apologize, that audio is coming from my phone, so I know it's probably not being picked up by my microphone. But I will just kind of play it through because it will, much like OneNote, show me when I have written a particular note by turning the handwritten note green to indicate I've done that. And I can click on a particular letter and it will bring me back to that point in that recording. Now, I can also switch the feed and I can convert handwritten notes into, I need to remember to actually do this in the phone application and not my computer. Welcome to Tech Inception, guys. I can just swipe it and it will convert my handwritten notes into typed text. One important thing to know, so this works great for words. It can do basic numbers as well, not as great with equations, although I do have a number of students that really love to do mathematical equations with the LiveScribe pens, just because they can work off a physical notebook. And that is all of the note-taking technology I had for you all today. I'm looking forward to hearing all of your questions and hopefully giving you guys some answers.
Thank you. Oh.
I think, oh.
Thank you, Jordan. You are truly a Jedi master when it comes to assistive technology. And may the 4th be with you, by the way, I forgot to say that. So we'll chat about some questions that are rolling in for students. A lot of them actually had to do with cost associated with the technologies that you talked about today. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about the specific ones that maybe are free versus have costs associated.
Sounds
and
good.
With the LiveScribe pens, is there a specific one that you recommend? Because someone said they find those really overwhelming.
Valid.
To figure out which one.
Okay, so I'll start by answering the question about cost first. So OneNote, working with the assumption, because based on my knowledge, all post-secondary institutions in Canada have a Microsoft 365 software suite. OneNote is free. So let it be noted, guys, please, if you're not sure, definitely check in with whatever institution you plan to go to, but please don't purchase like Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, etc. before going to class. You should get that for free. Glean, if you get an individual license on your own, it's approximately $125 Canadian. With that said, a number of post-secondary schools have site licenses for them. We do have a site license for students who come to the PMC. We always do check in though, just to figure out what technology is going to be the best fit first. And then in terms of the LiveScribe pens, they are definitely a little bit more pricey. I would highly recommend checking in to see if you have any scholarship money or are available for any sort of bursaries or funding for purchasing this particular technology. But LiveScribe pens are priced, the cheapest ones are at $100. The most expensive ones are closer to $200. In terms of how overwhelming a LiveScribe pen can be. So Totally understand that. I definitely have to say LiveScribe pens are not my favorite for my personal use. Part of that is handwriting for myself, really not my preferred note-taking mode. With the pens, I would love for the individual who asked that question, like if you want to kind of like message me individually, because I can definitely give you recommendations for what sort of note-taking technology might be a better fit. Or if you go to another institution, you should also have a conversation with your assistive technologist there. And I'm sure they can give you plenty of recommendations. But the important thing to keep in mind is like, why is a particular technology overwhelming? Is it because, like I said, for myself, I find LiveScribe pens overwhelming because I have to physically handwrite. Other people might find a particular note-taking technology overwhelming because of the number of features or lack of features. So just kind of get to the root for why that is the case, and then meet with an assistive technologist like myself, and we'll be able to kind of guide you from there. I know that's probably not a perfect answer, but I hope that will kind of put you on the right track for figuring out the best note-taking tool for you.
So just like when you're registering with Disability Center, you can also chat with an assistive technologist throughout the summer to figure out what tech is best for you, right?
Exactly.
Just a quick reminder here from another assistive technologist to wait to purchase a laptop. Is that right?
Oh,
like,
yes.
yes?
Yeah, we do highly recommend first, before you kind of purchase any sorts of laptop or any other computer you might use, we highly recommend you check in with the department that you're going to be studying under, because usually different programs will have particular technology specifications that they want you to meet first. After you do that, do recommend check in with an assistive technologist, just so we can kind of help make sure that like all the specs for your computer will be powerful enough for the assistive technology you use. Usually the specs that your department requires will meet the assistive technology needs above and beyond. But yeah, definitely check in with a couple people before you buy your laptop.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much, Jordan. I will remind our viewers that the OneNote and Glean and LiveScribe are also available in the more modules that I talked about in my session. And I believe the link is now available for those of you who have a Carleton login to go and look at. And Jordan will probably answer some of your questions in the back end as well. So thank you, Jordan.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoy the rest of Make the Cut, and may the 4th be with you.
Wonderful. That's excellent, Jordan. Thank you very, very much. And I will not judge you on your star drawing. You're still a star with me. I did want to thank you for pointing out R2-D2, one of my favorite Star Wars characters. And one time he visited here in Ottawa and got lost. It was because he took a R2-D2. Thank you very much. There's an awful lot of information that that Jordan has talked about with technologies, and again, that information will be available to you after we finish our program today. Also, I wanted to mention that all the information that has been presented is applicable to those of you that are going to post-secondary college or any other university, not just Carleton. All right, next we have our student success panel, and we have 3 students from Carleton here, Meredith, Liam, and Jasmina. A couple of things about them. Amanda will introduce them in more detail. First of all, they are all former grade 12 students, just like you. And also, they are all students with disabilities. And we really thank them so much for giving of their time to be with you here today to inspire you and let you know that it can be done. Okay, so now I'll turn it over to Amanda again to introduce our panel and conduct that session. Amanda?
Thank you so much, Patty. And now the time we've all been waiting for, the infamous Student Success Panel, where we get to hear lived experiences of students who, like Patty said, were once like yourselves, coming to post-secondary, not knowing what to expect. So I'm going to ask each of them to please introduce yourselves with your name, your program, and your year of study. And we'll start it off with Meredith.
Hi, everyone. My name is Meredith. I'm a third year psychology major, minoring in women and gender studies. I'm a Carleton student, obviously with a disability, and I'm really open about my disability, so I'll share it with you in case there's anyone else in the crowd who shares the same experience. But I have a learning disability, specifically dyscalculia.
Thank you so much, Meredith, and we're so happy to have you here with us today. Liam, if you could please introduce yourself.
All right. Hi, I'm Liam. I just finished my first year at Carleton at computer studies, and I have been diagnosed with ADHD since I was about 7, I believe.
Thank you, Liam. So happy to have you. And I'm sure you're going to have lots of questions because you just finished your first year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And we'd like to introduce Jasmina now, please.
Hi, so I'm Jasmina. I am a third-year student at Carleton. I'm studying psychology with a minor in neuroscience. I also obviously have a disability. I deal with ADHD that I was diagnosed with in my 20s, and then, well, early 20s. And then I also deal with a bunch of mental health issues, to name a few: anxiety, depression, and PTSD. So, yeah.
Thank you, Jasmina, and welcome to you as well. Maybe we'll have a little jump in from the puppy. I know you just got one. So, so we're going to get started with a few panel questions. And please also keep your questions for our panelists rolling in, because although I'll ask a few questions for them, I want questions from you guys as well, all of you folks watching. So the first question is going to be for Meredith. So Meredith, can you tell us about resources that you used on campus that helped you connect with people on campus, either virtually or in person or both?
Absolutely. So there are a bunch of resources on campus. Sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming because there's so much support. In terms of supportive resources, there are my personal favorite, health and counseling services. So for all you high school folks, you'll know that I'm sure that you have guidance counselors, and these are not specifically guidance counselors, but they are trained in helping you get through some mental health difficulties or stressors or concerns. So I would definitely recommend health and counseling services. One thing to note is that if you are presenting with some anxiety or stress, depression, I would recommend reaching out to your coordinator, not your professor, because they are just not trained in this area, so I recommend that. In terms of other resources on campus, there is the Act to Employ program, which is essentially helps students with disabilities get employment opportunities. I could go on, but I'll leave it with those two, as those are kind of the two that I have the most familiarity with.
Awesome, thank you so much. And like you said, specifically health and counseling services, that definitely exists across all institutions. And those services are free for students to access as well. So Meredith, thank you for imparting some wisdom in terms of different services to use. I'll throw it out to Liam or Jasmina if either of you have any to add there. Nope. Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say for like the connectedness, they aren't doing it right now. Sorry. Also, I guess I should introduce the puppy. This is Maki, everyone. She'll probably be a menace. She just woke up from a nap. Anyways, what I was going to say, they don't really do it right now just because with COVID, but coffee with a professor, or dinner with a professor, it was a really great way to kind of connect with your professors and like feel less intimidated by them. And like kind of form connections with them like outside of a classroom, which was really nice. Like it makes them feel like people.
And is that something that you initiated, Jasmina?
So I didn't get a chance to do it, unfortunately, but I had signed up for it, but then COVID shut everything down.
Okay.
So I
something you're
unfortunately
looking
couldn't
forward
do
to
it.
in September.
Yes, I'm hoping to do it really badly. There's quite a few professors on campus that I would love to like learn about their research and stuff. So yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. My next question is gonna go to Liam. So Liam, seeing as you just finished your first year with Carleton, can you tell us what some of the differences with accommodation processes look like for you from high school to university? And you know, what was your responsibilities within that?
Yeah, so I believe some of them have been talked about a bit earlier, but definitely it's one of the main things is you definitely got to get in a lot of the notes related to the related to the accommodation process. There's some documents you got to get in, and a different important part is you eventually get to reach out to one of the accommodation process members, and they kind of like they like walk you through some of the different parts of it, the nature of some of the things. Like usually they walk through you about the different kind of accommodations you can get access to. Something I should bring up is sometimes some classes with exams you'll need 2 separate sets of accommodations, but usually they're pretty similar in nature. Yeah, so if each semester you will typically have to renew your accommodations, so they don't just automatically transfer most of the time. So, and again with the exams, you'll have to each semester you'll have to renew both accommodations for in class and exams.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Liam. Before you go away, I know you've been studying primarily virtually, and I know we're returning to on campus. So can you tell us a little bit about what you're anticipating for yourself when you're returning back to the classroom?
Well, coming into the classroom after being completely virtual, I'm gonna say it's probably good to still a lot of I'm expecting some of the things like the meeting with the accommodation setup. So I believe when you meet with some of these accommodation people, you have a choice between you could meet them in person if you feel that's more comfortable, or you could do virtual calls. I obviously had to do virtual calls this year since current circumstances. But yeah, I'm definitely thinking that it's going to be pretty similar to the online one, if not even more available, since you can actually go into the offices this year.
And as far as classes go, are you looking forward to like being back in class? Are you a little bit hesitant about what campus is going to look like? What's that look like?
It's a bit mixed. Definitely looking forward to meeting some of the people I've been speaking with the past year. But it's good to meet some people that maybe didn't have access to the various platforms that I was on. So new faces, new experiences, and I get to manage like it's a whole new experience.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions as well coming up. Thank you, Liam. And Jasmina, can you tell us, I know you already talked about, meet your professor, but can you also share with us some student services on campus that you've used that you found reassuring and helpful at all?
Yeah, of course. I would say the biggest one would be, I'm so sorry, is the Peer Mentor program through Paul Menton Center. So I didn't use it, but I'm actually a peer mentor. So essentially like what we do is we meet up with new students or new to PMC and like kind of talk about, like what kind of like helping with self-advocacy. So encouraging them to be more comfortable talking with their coordinators, talking with their professors. And some of them even are in the process of getting their diagnosis. So like helping them along with that process as well. Yeah, so that one was really cool. Some other ones that I personally found really helpful that I've used, being able to book study rooms in the library. I used that a ton when we were on campus. Test taking accommodations, through is it the McIntyre Center, I believe is what it's called, the exam center? Yeah, they were great. And then the peer assisted study sessions, so like the PASS workshops as they're called. They're essentially like group study sessions that are peer led by people who have already taken the classes. So it's like a really great way to kind of like meet up with others that you may not have known from your class, and like study together and see what everyone else kind of had an idea of. Yeah.
That is awesome. So yeah, you brought up a good point. So PMC has our own specific mentors for students, but there's upper year mentors across campus for a lot of different things. And we are so happy to have you as a mentor, Jasmina, as we are always happy to have all of our mentors you can be paired with. So again, I encourage our audience members to check for mentors in the institutions they're going to, because just like the student success panel can be really helpful here to get some like personal feedback. It's nice to have somebody you can check in that's not a staff member, who can, you can talk about lived experience. So thank you for sharing that, Jasmina. And I believe Meredith shared another one called Act to Employ, which at Carleton is a space where students can find supported employment on campus or in the community for students who have disabilities. And again, there's a lot of employment opportunities at all institutions, not always specifically for students with disabilities, but all students. So just something to bear in mind as well. All right, so we know you all have some burning questions for our panelists, so I don't want to use up time with any more of mine. So the first question we have coming in here is, were there any major surprises for you during your first 3 weeks of classes? This should be an interesting one for people to answer. Who would like to tackle this one? Oh, Meredith, go ahead.
I feel like I have to I'm going into my 4th year, so I have to really think about this. But one thing that I do remember about my first few weeks of university were honestly just like the influx of information that you get at the beginning of the semester. So unlike high school, where you kind of go day to day, maybe week to week, with knowing what's expected, what the lesson plan is, in university or college, I think all post-secondary institutions do this, you are actually given the information through what's called a syllabus or a course outline, and you actually are able to see all of the due dates, all of the assigned readings, the topics of the lectures. So I found that to be really interesting because I was not used to that in high school. So that really helped me as a planner. I really enjoyed that, but some people may find that overwhelming, understandably. So yeah, that was something I noticed.
Very cool. Thank you, Meredith. Anybody have anything else to add? Oh, I think Liam has his hand up. Yep, go ahead, Liam.
All right, so definitely as like a first year student, okay, in the beginning it felt a bit overwhelming because it's a lot of things are different, but as you go through, you notice a lot of the things are like the same. You begin to kind of get the flow. It's definitely getting used to the flow of university was one of the biggest surprises, because it was like, I don't know, it was both like high school but not like high school. You eventually just get used to the flow, so definitely it will feel bit different at first, but yeah, you get the hang of it eventually.
And did you use any strategies to help you get used to the flow?
Oh yeah, so definitely getting everything out on like a schedule, if that works best for you, that definitely helps, because once you see your schedule of classes, you eventually begin to learn like, okay, so I should start getting ready for this, and oh, I have a bit of time here, or this class gives a little less work than the other one, so maybe I could put in a little extra study time here or something like that. It's definitely figuring out that flow and getting it down somewhere, especially if it helps you.
Very cool. And you even did that virtually, so it's not like you had other people around you being like, you know, prompting you to do that stuff. So that's cool.
Oh yeah.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to move on to the next question, which is what PMC accommodations and supports are most important in addressing your disability needs during your first few terms at Carleton? Have they stayed the same? Have they changed? Who would like to tackle that question? Oh, Jasmina, go ahead.
Don't mind the puppy chewing on me. I would say my accommodations have stayed the same pretty much throughout my whole time with PMC. But the most important ones were like realizing, that I needed extra test time to like give myself, time to actually like think and not feel overwhelmed, and how important it was to have like a quiet place to do a test. Because usually when you do midterms in university, you're in a room with about 200 to 300 other students, and being in a room like that can be a bit overwhelming because there's people staring at you, like the proctors and such, so it can be very, very overwhelming and nerve-wracking. So being in like, a room with like 2 or 3 other people where it's completely quiet, and you don't have those like prying eyes on you, or at least you don't feel them as much in my case, was really important for me.
Thank you so much for sharing that. You're right. Kind of trying to find the right ones that work for you in either a virtual setting or in-person setting is really important. So another question to have for your disability coordinator for sure. Doesn't look like anybody else is dying to follow up with that question. So we'll move on to our last one before our wrap-up question, which is, what do you think success looks like for you as a student? And what helped you get there? Oh, Meredith, go ahead. I saw your hand go up first.
So honestly, success at the beginning of my university career is a lot different than how I define it now. So going into university, my success was honestly very perfectionistic. And I soon realized that getting straight A's wasn't the only thing that I wanted to experience, if you will, at university. So I really changed my mindset, to be honest, and am now involved in more volunteer work and student labs, psychology labs in particular. And so honestly, success looks like listening to yourself each day and just understanding that each day will look different and that you'll have different capabilities depending on what season you are in a university. Midterm season probably requires a little bit more self-compassion as you're getting ready for finals or midterms or finals exams. So yeah, it really depends on where you're at, and I think just accepting that is how I would define it now.
Look at that growth. That's so cool to hear from you in terms of like, I thought one thing originally and now this is how I feel. So even within short periods of time, you can change your perspective, which is
absolutely.
Really awesome. Thank you, Meredith. Liam, I saw your hand go up as well.
Oh yeah. So yeah, definitely success, sorry, isn't necessarily just like getting super high marks or anything. Sometimes it's just like being like, oh, this specific project, even though I didn't necessarily do good on it, I actually like learned something really interesting about this topic, and because I learned more about this, I'm kind of more enjoying my time here in this specific class. And also another part that I found really enjoyable was success is also could also be like the people you meet, because I've met quite a few people this year that I wouldn't even have thought that I'd meet, but after meeting them, it's just like it just feels a way more fulfilling year after.
That's awesome. Yeah. So again, that connectedness piece was really important to you, it seems like, which is pretty cool. Well, thank you to all of our panelists. Before we wrap up, I'm going to ask the age-old question of like, if you were to tell your former self, you know, something that you know now, what would that be? So again, I'll start it off with, actually, you know what? I'm going to start it off with Jasmina. How about you tell us what would be that advice to your former self?
Oh, goodness. It would honestly be that it's not a race. You're going to get where you are supposed to be at your own time. And school is for you. Because for a while, I thought school wasn't for me. I didn't like it. I wasn't a very studious person. But it really was just that I wasn't studying something that I liked and that I wasn't passionate, or that I was passionate about. So, you know, like once you find that thing, it doesn't feel like work. And like, you know, even if it takes you a few years to figure that out, you don't need to go to university right away. You can take your time and figure that out and make the most out of your experience, because you'll enjoy it a lot more than if you had rushed into it.
That is awesome. Thank you, Jasmina. Let's turn it over to Liam. What would be your piece of advice to yourself last year when you were starting, I guess?
All right. So definitely one thing is keep an eye on those deadlines a little bit. The syllabus will be incredibly helpful for that. If you manage to like spot an assignment ahead of time and you can even get like a little bit ahead, then you'll be like absolutely fine with that. And yeah, make sure you again keep a good schedule. That works really well with the looking ahead. In fact, sometimes you could even make like a calendar of some sort if that's really helpful. You put everything down, mark it down as you go, so you know, okay, I have this and this and this until this. And it helps even with like in the when you're planning for other classes, you can be like, okay, so I have this on this day, so I know I have to do studying in this little block here. So
Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank you. So being like scheduled and planned. So we've got, you know, don't rush it and take your time from Jasmina. We've got, you know, stay ahead of things by planning and organizing and time management. And Meredith, what's our closing piece of advice for everyone before we turn it over to Patty?
So I echo what everyone has said so far. I would also say that one, kind of to what Jasmina was saying, slow down. Like you have all the time in the world to figure out what you want to do and what you don't want to do. Sometimes the biggest thing you learn is what you don't want to do. And remember that you have full agency over your choices. That's something that I forgot. I kind of was dependent on other people to choose things for me. And that's, you know, just something that I struggle with personally, but I'm working on it. And I've think developed a little bit more independence. And yeah, just remember that you have agency over your choices. And I feel like I always say this isn't my first time at Make the Cut, but make sure to be self-compassionate. And yeah, I wish everyone the best.
Amazing. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. You can see why it's one of the fan favorites for people to watch. My pleasure hosting the panel, and thank you to the 3 students who spoke for us today. Patty, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thanks, everyone.
Wonderful, Amanda. Just a great job, as always. And thanks very much, Meredith, Liam, and Jasmina. Your students who are speaking to students, and it's really upbringing and reassuring and inspiring. When the high school students see that you can do it, it gives them hope that they can do it also. So thank you very much for your time and volunteering. I have a few points to make before we wrap up. We'd love to get some feedback from the students that are watching. So students, please take a moment if you're watching to, after the event ends, to answer 4 short questions using the Survey Monkey. Your responses will remain anonymous. A link to the survey will be posted in the chat. And like it says, don't worry, it's only 4 quick questions, or you can return later to the live event page where you logged in. The survey is posted there. Educators, do note that Linda Stewart will be in touch with you by email for your feedback. So thanks to all you students, educators, and parents for attending today, and also a great big thanks to the entire PMC team. There's an awful lot of people behind the scenes that have made this possible and made it such a great day for us today. So this completes our mission to ease your transmission. Thank you very much for being with us.
Great job, hon.